Hello, welcome back to Fireside Gaming. My name is Ben, and today we're going to continue on with Suzerain. So, last time out we got our initial reactions to the proposed constitutional changes, as well as had a somewhat surprise meeting with the old guard. So, I went ahead and continued on to the next churn here. So this new one is called Trials of Democracy. So yeah, looks like there's a whole bunch of reports and a bunch of newspapers here, so let's start with the reports. Why not? Alright, from Narbel. Report of lack of hospitals. The mayor of Narbel has reported that their hospitals are overburdened and they are unable to respond to the needs of the citizens. He complained about months-long waiting lists for terminally ill patients. On top of capacity issues, he has also noted that the facilities are still largely using outdated technology. That's not good. I think that's something we might address later. I'm not sure. Alright, from Lockhaven. Recession hits farmers again. As per the latest news from Lockhaven, the farming industry has taken another hit as a result of the recession. There are reports that 16% of all wheat in Lockhaven is rotting in barns due to lack of buyers. Farmers are requesting additional funds from the government to survive the year. That's cool. Alright. From Sarna, Brutish Resistance in Sanctuaries. Security units have arrested 3 priests at 2 different nerdy sanctuaries in Sarna after finding links to insurgent activities. The report came from an elderly man who wanted to pray in peace, but instead found himself invited to join the Brutish Freedom Front by a state-sanctioned priest. Further incidents indicate that the BFF is pushing for a local recruitment drive in different sanctuaries across the region. That's potentially a problem, but that's okay. We'll try to get the Bloods on our side here later on. Alright, from Earlery, Young Swords and NFP flags burned. A massive counter-protest against Young Swords, led by a local politician known to be aligned with the Red Youth, resulted in many injuries and property damage. Subsequently, Young Swords and National Front Party flags were burnt, which caused tensions to escalate. Local police dispersed the protesters by sundown. Alright, from Boren, Communist books burned. Local residents gather thousands of books that they claim to be spreading communist and millennialist propaganda at the Century Park in Boren and set the books on fire. Aggressive slogans starting the Red Youth, the Workers' Party of Bloody, and the Communist Party of Sorlin were shouted. Youth groups from the local party offices of the USP and NFP also joined in with the burning. The fire department was dispatched and the protesters dispersed on their own. Fantastic. Alright, see if there's any reports on Whole Sword. And there is not, so we'll come back to that. Let's check the news first. Alright, from Sorlin today, school poisoning in Ribble. Police have arrested the principal of a high school in Ribble in southern Berger, where 12 students died after eating a free meal laced with pesticide. The students, aged between 15 and 17, died after eating a lunch of local dish of zabla cooked at the school in a poverty-stricken city. Police have started the investigation to solve the mystery of how the pesticide ended up in the food. Hopefully they're trying to solve the murder too. Alright, we got 2 of them here from the Radical. Now, time for women to stand up. The women in Sorlin have always been under pressure by the unequal society and the system of discrimination that was built by old men who only knew about war, said Katarina Horton in a women's rally that was held in Whole Sword yesterday. The Swordfish League of Women is organizing a number of rallies across Sorlin to bring the change Sorlin desperately needs. It is time for Sorlin to realize that we have to respect every individual regardless of their sex and strive to become an advanced civilization. Women have long been pushed to the corners of the social and political life. To address this change, a new campaign has started all over Sorlin to establish a framework for women's rights. The Swordfish League of Women is organizing rallies with the support of from Minister of Education, Ciara Wald, and member of the Assembly, Katarina Horton. Everybody is equal according to Sorge Constitution, but there are no protections against discrimination, which only reinforces the inequality in practice, said Walda in a press conference. This movement must be supported by all Sorge women as well as men. We need to bring change now. We can do it. And questioning Solst education. The newly unveiled SIPA Education Performance Report unveiled a sad reality about Sorlin's abysmal status in comparison to many countries. Sorlin was rated 39th out of the 68 nations that were assessed by the OMAC organization. The primary gauge of the quality of education is made from a sample of 16-year-olds from each nation, their capacity in fields like mathematics, history, chemistry, and many others. One of the key issues was seen as a strong focus on history and citizenship classes, leaving little time for scientific fields. Minister Walda often mentioned the gaps in the system in her assembly debates before she joined the cabinet. This is also supported by one of our editors, a professor from Whole Sword State, who had long been critical of the situation in secondary education. The SIPA report reveals the damning truth that socialist education based on the principles of statism, nationalism, republicanism poisons the bright minds of our children. We need to rid the system from the poison that is ideological indoctrination. Let our future generations think for themselves. Well, we're going communist, so at the very least we're going to remove the socialist propaganda. I don't know what else will happen. Alright, from The Economist's upcoming government budget changes. As top economy experts in the country, we've been watching the upcoming changes to the government budget very closely. President Anton Rein's first internal economical challenge lies ahead, and we will see if he can prove his capabilities as a leader who can think ahead. The potential ramifications in diverting the funding of certain governmental branches has always been a point of contention for any leader, and it is no different for this case. We will see if President Rein can hold on to the promises he has given during the election campaign. And the last up here from Geopolitico, Van Horten blames Volksland for the missing fishing vessel. On Tuesday morning, Agnolia's Prime Minister Van Horten has made a statement denouncing Volksland for the missing vessel, hull number ARV-0238. Our dutiful Coast Guards have rescued a crew member of the missing vessel. Through his statement, we've learned the ship's unfortunate end was none other than the Volkslandian Navy. However, the Prime Minister's refused to disclose the surviving crew member due to fear of an assassination attempt from Volksland to cover up their hostility, as the minister later claimed. Cool. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's go have a barbecue with our kid. It was a Saturday afternoon, my first break from work in what felt like years, and the weather couldn't have been more perfect. Trying to keep my mind off the upheaval sparked by the circus assassination, I lit the backyard grill. Monica and Gianna were shopping for craft supplies, and I had given the staff the day off. It was just myself and Frank at home. I wasn't sure how he felt about me at the moment, but I did know how he felt about barbecued ribs. Our cook had left some marinating in the refrigerator. Sure enough, as soon as Frank glimpsed the grill and the meat, he stepped outside to join me. Well, look who's finally out of his room. You should talk, Dad. I never see you at home anymore. I'm sorry. I know I haven't been around very often lately, but I'm happy to see you now. It's okay. I know you've got the most stressful job in the country. You've got to feed your family on top of it all. We both chuckled. I turned to tend to the fire. Here, let me try. He grabbed the fan and started quickly waving it over the coals. The fire roared to life. He turned to look at me with a grin on his face, as if he were expecting praise. Not bad, son. Not bad. Thank you, sir. It is in our utmost interest to fulfill our duties with precision. The grilling shall commence in exactly 1 minute, 32 seconds. That was a spot-on impersonation of Lucien. We looked at each other for a second, then burst out laughing. I realized my throat was parched. There was a 6-pack of beer in the kitchen. Hey, why don't you grab us a couple of beers? He looked at me in disbelief. You mean I can, but Mom told me. He stopped himself, quickly ran inside, and returned with 2 beers. We cracked them open, clinked the bottles, and gazed out at the city skyline. For a moment, my thoughts flashed back to my childhood, my relationship with my own father. My father was a poor man who struggled to provide for us on his meager income. He put me to work on the farm long before I was Frank's age, and even then we couldn't always make ends meet. Yet we were always close as a family. Now that I was the president, I knew Frank would never face the same hardships I had. I couldn't deny that I felt a bit jealous. Dad, can I ask you something? Yeah, go on. It's just, I feel like there's so much you've been hiding from me about your past and about what's going on right now. Like at dinner that night after the ball, you told me everything's under control, but it wasn't, was it? I know it happened in the 20s. We learned all about it at school. Now the protests and riots, is it going to be the same thing? Dad, is there going to be civil war in Swordland? No, I will never let that happen. Oh, good. But what was it like back then? Uncle Peter said the two of you went through a lot. I'm not a kid anymore, you can tell me. Before I could gather my thoughts, the familiar images started flashing before my eyes. Images of soldiers advancing towards me and my friends, weapons drawn, of people I knew, friends and neighbors, being dragged to streets and murdered in alleyways. Shock and grief on the faces of fathers, mothers, and orphan children. Yeah, those certainly were dark times. It seems like it. But you're nearly a grown man. Let's talk about it. Frank leaned forward in his chair, his eyes wide. It was time to tell him about the coup of 1927. I was barely older than you are now, studying law at the Whole Sword State University. I was a freshman, excited and young. I had just left the classroom to go back home as I heard the sound of multiple vehicles approaching the campus gates. As they got closer, I realized there were military camouflage trucks and tanks carrying hundreds of soldiers. The same soldiers that were supposed to protect Sylvan citizens pointed guns at us. They immediately took control of the facilities. One of my friends asked what was going on and was arrested immediately. More people got angry and gathered in protest. Frank kept listening, a shocked look on his face. Yep, so I ran like a coward. Now we'll protect our image a little bit. Seeing the crowd gathering, I knew something was going to happen, something bad. I decided that it was impossible to go against armed men and departed. I stopped there and turned my head away from Frank. It was time to tell him about the Civil War. It was right after your mother. We had both joined the same human rights group to push for change after the coup of 27. Eventually, I became convinced I wasn't doing enough, so I joined the Red Youth. Then, one night, it happened. Two different factions in the army, one of them led by fascist General Litterin, and the other by socialist General Ricard, started fighting against each other. It was a bloodbath, nowhere safe. Frank shifted in his seat, visibly uncomfortable. So, we organized a protest one day in support of Ricard. In our minds, he was the better of the two and a true socialist. I forgot I just ran away from everything at the beginning. I paused for a minute before continuing. The soldiers were waiting for us. I knew something was going to happen, something bad. We stood and fought, but many were arrested and shot. I trailed off, hoping Frank would ask for any more details. That's probably enough for today. It's okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked you about it. I know I don't understand how easy my life is sometimes. One more thing, though. I know that you joined the Yard Youth back then. Do you mind if I ask why? A communist revolution for Sordland was, and still is, the only way. Frank raised his eyebrows. His curiosity still not satisfied. But since my reluctance to go on, he simply nodded. Sorry for bombarding you with questions. I know I complain sometimes, but my problems are nothing compared to what you went through. Well, I'm here to listen to them, no matter what they are. Before Frank could say anything else, I heard the front door unlock. Diana and Monica's voices and the sounds of rustling shopping bags filled the house. Alright, I'll be upstairs till dinner. Frank went in and dashed upstairs. I took a long sip from my beer, looking at the city and the now setting sun. I hoped that talking to Frank about my past had been the right decision. Part of me felt as if some sort of burden had been lifted. But I had the same nightmares again that night. Nice. Alright. Let's go and start the newspapers here. Alright, Whole Sword Post. Attacker opened fire on protesters. 17 dead. A man opened fire in Vezord City Center during a protest march organized by the Communist Party of Swordland against the murder of Bernard Circus. The attacker used a military-grade machine gun dated 1929, which is suspected to be part of the inventory of the Swordist Armed Forces. The attacker killed himself right after shooting 25 people, killing 16. He took out the weapon from the newsstand in the square, brandished it and yelled, "Come, I'll give you freedom," one witness said. Highly charged word freedom was previously associated with British separatists, but has been used widely during the previous month of protests against the murder of Bernard Circus. The Minister of the Interior, Lilia Sgrov, said that she had spoken to the Chief of Vezor Police and asked him to take strict action. The government will not tolerate any such incident, and the perpetrators will not be spared, she said. Cool, so is it 16 dead or 17? I'm not sure if it technically makes a difference, but, you know, get your facts straight, newspaper. Alright, from Lockhaven Times. Gilsord FC, Anarcha FC derby postponed due to protests. One of the most anticipated matches between Gilsord and Anarcha was postponed because of the intense protests in the city of Anarcha. The league has issued the following statement regarding the situation. Due to safety reasons, the players are compromised during this time of trouble. We have decided to postpone the game. Moreover, we stand in solidarity with the fans, our players, and the people of Anarcha in the fight against injustice. Mayor Curtin Lest has also made a statement. It is a tragic day in Swordland where the president himself refused to act in the face of communism. It is said that inaction breeds doubt and fear. Thus, I fear that the spread of communism is sown deeper inside the heart of the nation than we thought. However, I and the people of Anarcha will never stop fighting for the soul of our great country. Alright. And time for some more bitching from the radical. Undemocratic elections of Swordland. Swordland has an electoral threshold of 10%. This means any political parties that are under 10% of the vote can't even enter the assembly. This is the very reason why the United Swordland Party holds 52% of the seats in the assembly today. It is also the reason why the largest ethnic minority of Swordland is non-existent in Swedish politics. The last elections have shown that the pro-British WPB had an enormous voter base of just above 9%, but it still failed to meet the 10% threshold and couldn't enter politics. Similarly, the CPS has won around 8% of the general vote, but was eliminated. This means that millions of votes are not representative in our current government. Moreover, this has benefited the USP the most, gave them the lawmaking power. The undemocratic threshold needs to be lowered down so that there is true representation in the assembly and a true representation of our voices. No one can call Swordland a democracy without a decrease, or a constitutional proposal that does not include such change democratic. Cool. Alright, looks like I've got a whole bunch of reports again. And we're heading to Narbel for the story. Let's just make our way across the map here. Alright, from Morna industrial output concerns. The mayor of Morna has reported that their industrial output numbers this year are 12% lower than last year. They are requesting additional support to improve their industrial capacity, including machinery and personnel, to combat the downwards trend. With the construction of several new factories in Morna, the mayor stated his belief that an economic upturn in the city is still possible if government investments succeed. According to current projections, Morna is set to lose an additional 2% of industrial output next year. However, recent data from the municipality suggests that an investment worth several billions of rand will stop the downward trend and increase industrial output in a short amount of time. Cool. I don't know where we're going to invest yet. Alright, from Whole Sword, USP reported reforms. Many members of the USP, led by Albin Clavin and the reform wing of the party, clarified their demands from the government and the party Congress. The upcoming constitutional reform, Albin Clavin stated that without ministry reforms, they won't be able to stand behind the new reform package. Cool. And from Ansel Rock Prison, there's a prisoner riot. Yesterday, around 11 a.m., a prison riot started in Ward C of the Ansel Rock Prison, which was eventually suppressed. Ward C is generally used for keeping political prisoners, and riot started when the warden was killed by a bluish political prisoner. 4 guards and 21 prisoners died, 134 were injured. Coolio. Alright, from Lockhaven, H3 report from SSC. SSC's project manager for the H3 highway has reported that the project has been progressing well, and they have already started laying down the foundations of the ground retaining walls, bridges, and earthworks. Project supervisors from the government confirmed the report, saying that most of the preliminary work has already been done by the SSC. However, the government officials added that there were a couple of delays related to the transportation of construction materials, which were not included in the SSC's report. Coolio. Sounds like they might be slightly corrupt. Alright. Let's head to Narbel for a presidential visit. I was traveling to the snow-covered city of Narbel in the Nargis region for the Rural Development Forum organized by the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Education. The mountainous city of Narbel had gritty tones to it. It's mostly regarded as one of the poorer cities in Swordland. Its people were hardy and wary. Even after the discovery of natural resources in the area, years of neglect by the central government were apparent on the buildings and the general infrastructure. Natural resources, namely gas and oil, were now under the control of Gasom, which elevated the corporation to a place of power. My task in this forum was mainly symbolic: fake smiles and handshakes with oil barons, meeting with local politicians, but most importantly of all, to make sure that Narbel does not feel like it was forgotten by the government. The scenery so far, however, was a reflection of Narbel's neglects. Main roads to the city were not maintained well. There were many bumps and empty discolored spots in the asphalt. Navigating and swerving to avoid the inconveniences, our motorcade finally started nearing the city. As if my discomfort from the bumpy ride was apparent to him, Serge rolled down the partition window. "We'll be arriving at Hotel West in a few minutes, sir." Ugh, good. Whatever gets out of here quickly. I let out a deep sigh. After a moment, Serge started to smile under his mustache. Hey, what's that smile for? "Sir, I just want to say it has been great these last 2 months. As you know, my wife Susan recently gave birth to our son, sir, and now my daughter just started a very good high school in Holzod." Yeah, that's great news, Serge. I'm happy for you. "I appreciate it, sir, truly. I was worried that I wouldn't be able to afford a good private school if she scored less on the entrance exams. But I shouldn't have made my insecurity get to me. Erica outsmarts me all the time. I'm very proud to have a daughter like her." So that means she must have taken the smarts from her mother. He let out a laugh. She must have. My daughter looks up to the First Lady for inspiration. It's not just my daughter, sir. She is the inspiration for almost all women in the country. But at the same time, it must be hard for the First Lady as well. All this attention, adjusting to the new high-profile life, and the husband has great responsibility. You're right, it's definitely pretty hard for her. It must be, sir. We sometimes forget the important people in life between all the responsibility and us, those we care for. I agree. Search continued after a moment of silence. I told you, sir, we named my son Georg. The doctor said he is very healthy, and thankfully so is my wife. Let's go with that one. Tell me more about Susan. What kind of person is she? She has a good heart. Her family comes from Sarah, so they are a little more traditional. I really like her selflessness. Monica's persevering. It can be inspiring at times to have a partner like that. It's only fitting. A wine is for a wine. Serge sighed. I already started thinking about their university education, especially Erica. I want to send her to a good private school, but with the current state of the economy, it's going to be hard for us. Alright, I know we can't afford to help him, so we'll fix the economy one way or another. If anyone can, let's go, Mr. President. The car hit a major pothole and a bump, which lifted us up in our seats for a second. Jeez, are you fine? Yes, sir. I hope the car is fine, too. The motorcade began approaching the hotel. The Hotel West was supposedly the best hotel in Narbel. The large 25-story main building was undoubtedly one of the taller, more expensive buildings in the city. It towered over the nearby slums and had been a target for protests when it was first built. A crowd was gathered in front of the hotel with the welcoming committee at its center. As we approached the red carpeted entrance, I could see the mayor of Narbel and his top aides. Serge got out of the car and opened the door. He bowed his head respectfully and gestured towards the entrance. Thank you. Have a good day, Mr. President. As soon as I left the vehicle, the fresh air of Narbel filled my lungs. Almost immediately, everyone present in the crowd flocked over to me with an excessive display of courtesy, smiles, and handshakes while I donned the mask of a politician. Mask that I was very used to. I'd hope you're used to it. You're the bloody president. Alright, wow. Only a couple of reports, but a whole bunch of newspapers again. So, let's do the reports first, as it looks like there's just two of them. From Holsor, PFJP report on reforms. Franz Richter, leader of the PFJP, recently outlined their demands for the reform package. He declared that without the implementation of term limits in limited degrees, it would be very difficult for him and his party to stand behind the reform package. Cool. Alright, from Vezord, young sword suspected of terror attack. At approximately 4:46 on Monday, a terror attack occurred in the Vezord city center during a rally by the left-wing CPS. The attackers, suspected to be working with the Young Swords or another organization connected to them, opened fire with an automatic rifle on the protesting civilians. 17 people were killed, including the attacker, who shot himself afterwards. Witnesses testified that the rifle was hidden behind a newsstand. Local police are now wary of this tactic, and all newsstands will be inspected by the police before and during crowded rallies. Further investigations on Young Swords are underway. Okay, so that makes more sense for the newspaper then. 16 innocent victims, and then the attacker, who probably really isn't a victim. Alright, got like 5 newspapers here, so start off with the Holsor Post. Protests appear calmer, as we just heard about a mass shooting in a protest. That's cool. Alright, anyway. As protests continue nationwide, tension eases in some cities. Still, several major cities, including Deer and Lockhaven, did have some scattered reports of violence on Monday night. Tens of thousands in Deer, Strix's hometown, walked in a memorial march, though police moved in on the thinning crowd as the evening settled. Making arrests. Authorities said demonstrators began throwing rocks and ignored orders to disperse. The protests in Holsor and most other major cities appeared calm, with fewer clashes between civilians and police. Authorities have made at least 9,800 arrests related to the protests, according to tally from the state press. Cool. Alright, got 3 more from the Radical here. Shocking misogynist rally. Every day we are appalled by how deep the roots of misogyny goes in our country. We were appalled again yesterday, during a protest by the Social League of Women. Counter-protesters showed up to disrupt the peaceful rally. In the resulting scuffle between the police, the protesters, and the mob, many were arrested on both sides. The road to change is filled with real obstacles, but we said it before, we can do it. Alright, Seoul needs to answer for his crimes. Looking at the history of everything wrong in our country, there's only one figure that everyone points at, Tarkin Seoul. He has devolved our country into something much worse than what it was before. He has committed crimes against humanity. We all still remember the Ism incident, the wounds that have been inflicted on hundreds of thousands of people with Buddhist ethnic background. We've been calling for his trial, and we believe it is time that this government opens the way for fair trial by removing the undemocratic and absurd laws that protect him. It is time that the Constitution of 1929 that protects Seoul be changed. People are still waiting for a fair trial, for justice to be served, and for their questions to be answered. Cool. I believe that is something that I might try to do later on. Nothing else would be nice to get the achievements for putting Seoul on trial. But, yeah, got one more here from them. So, Labor Union Rights March. A large group of labor union members gathered around the city of Volgan to protest against the poor condition of worker rights in Sordland. People could be seen holding signs, pleading for accountability and basic rights in corporate work environments. Dozens of tourist workers were in the midst of the crowd. One worker was heard saying, "I know the law gives us nothing on paper. Is this the reality we choose to accept?" Others pointed out that the country is relying on the workers to stop their session, but doesn't give them anything back. Looking at how great the rights are in Volks, minimum wage, overtime pay, and safe working regulations. The time for real workers' reform is now, one voice demanded with frustration. When we had the opportunity to interview some open-minded managers from corporations, they relayed that the companies have little to no oversight. It is hard to disagree that the time for labor reform is long due. Albin Klobin from the reformist wing of the USB has seen the potential and announced that work has begun to explore what can be achieved. President Rain listened to the demands. Time will tell. Alright, the last one here is from The Economist. Education privatization proven successful. Our editorial team immediately analyzed the SIPA report recently revealed to assess the standards of education. We are curious to see how the policies of the last decade have begun changing the performance metrics. The SBA specifically stood out with a jump of 6 positions forward to 5th out of 68. After research and analysis collaboration with the Vice President of Magnus Cartus and the SMEA chapter leader of OMAC, we gained critical insights to how SBA increased its education quality. It boils down to 2 major points. One is privatization efforts led by Prime Minister Alvarez that led to most schools in wealthier neighborhoods, 1,404 to be precise, to be privatized. This lifted a significant budget burden off the state because the wealthy paid for great education for their kids and were still taxed reasonably in order to divert funds to state schools elsewhere. The second major factor was the allowance of minor curricular changes for private institutions that led to major improvements in student participation, teacher happiness, and boosted the performance of the institutions. All in all, the improvements to the system and the massive amounts of $34 billion raised for LSP made it a lucrative operation. Sordland desperately needs more capital to tackle the recession, and when education is privatized, foreign capital will also aid in establishing quality schools. But Vice President Magnus Cartus pointed out that the SIPA report doesn't include access to education metrics, and that LSP has inequality problems. In a statement that hasn't been proven with any statistical research from OMAC, which is why it must be taken with a pinch of salt. The Rain administration could be practical about this term and look to the Southern example on how to do positive change even though the opposition from the Minister of Education is expected. That kind of feels like it goes against our socialist leanings here, so I don't think we're going to do that. Alright, well let's go ahead and head back to Narbel here for a briefing on the current welfare situation. I arrived at the meeting room for my talk with Ciara and Pascal. Before beginning, I took a moment to appreciate the view from the balcony. The mountains of Narbel were completely covered with snow. While I was mesmerized by the scenery, Pascal Benewell walked up to me. My Minister of Health was, ironically, somewhat poorly, having gained a few pounds since his breakthrough as best-selling writer. But his authority on social affairs could not be questioned. Such a spectacular view. Sierra Waldo, the Minister of Education, joined us on the balcony, dressed in a sky blue pantsuit. Her preference for trousers or dresses had made her the subject of much palace gossip, but it didn't seem to bother her in the slightest. Spectacular indeed. But if you look at the opposite direction, you'll see what souls decades of neglect to the city. Most of the people living in Narbel are workers, farmers, and their wives and children. They're breaking their backs with close to no pay, all thanks to greedy corporations. And my intention is to help the working class. I'm glad to see eye to eye on the issue. If you look past the view, you can see the real problems like poverty. Pascal nodded gravely. This was a subject he knew quite a bit about himself. His best-known books were about the plight of Sordlin's less fortunate, drawing from his own past growing up in squalor. Well put, Miss Waldo. I don't need to tell you about my own experiences with poverty. You've been through some of the hardships yourself, Mr. President. It feels like the cards are stacked against you. Exactly. It feels as if there is no way out. You don't have to have been born poor to sympathize with the plight of the impoverished, much as you don't have to have been born a woman to recognize Sordlin's need for parity among the sexes. Parity among sexes shouldn't be our first priority. Look at how many high-ranking female politicians our country has. Appearances can be deceiving, Pascal. Her voice sounded bitter. Think about how Lily's Graf got to her current position. I don't necessarily believe the rumors about her and Saul, but she never could have risen so high if she didn't parrot his calls. Gloria Tori, is it an accident that the first female assembly speaker is such a staunch conservative? And then there's Alphonse's habit of promoting women to prominent positions to give Saul the progressive sheen while accomplishing nothing in reality. While women in places like Narbel are denied any opportunity to advance, the government can use a handful of female politicians from wealthy families, myself included, to pretend that only obstacle to success is their own lack of initiative. Meanwhile, those of us who don't use our clout to help powerful men stay in power are denigrated as angry spinsters. I asked Mr. President, does anyone care that your strategist Mr. Gallard doesn't have a wife? I agree with you. Sordlin's women deserve better. Can you shut up now? I'm glad to hear that. As I was saying, isn't it about time Holzwood addressed this country's real issues? Rather than bowing to the wishes of the hawks and fearmongers in the establishment of diverting yet more resources to the military and law enforcement? Our welfare, healthcare, and education systems have been decaying since the recession. Sordlin's poorer communities are losing hope. Hopelessness and a lack of opportunities can drive people to extreme situations. We're seeing increased crime, domestic violence, and yes, rising inequality between men and women. Those issues must be tackled from different directions. We need to engage it holistically. I'm planning to help by using an increased budget to improve the quality of healthcare. Well, that could prove useful. We need to be doing a lot more. Education, similar issues. There is another subject I want to mention. I've been working on improving the rights of workers in our country and have proposed a draft bill that is currently being reviewed by our party. Mr. Clavin has already backed me and given me support. Sordlin has fallen behind most countries on this subject. It is my responsibility to ensure this is not the case. There is always room for improvement. It's good to hear that you're pushing for it. I appreciate the kind words, Mr. President. I will not let you down. It is also a matter of life and death. Every decade we have some horrific accident to an employer's disregard for the worker's safety. So, would you back the bill when it arrives on your desk, Mr. President? More than likely, but to make a decision, I would need to evaluate the contents in detail first. Understandable. You receive all the sections in an outline. It's getting a little cold out here. Let's head inside and continue our discussions. We headed back inside. The meeting room was already prepared for state business. Small gifts for each of us had been placed on the table by the municipality. We took our seats. Alright, let's start with your healthcare overview, Pascal. As you wish, Mr. President. Sordlin has a free healthcare system except for a few private hospitals operating under it. Most of the populace receives adequate treatment. Health issues primarily appear in rural areas due to a lack of quality services. I am doing my best to ensure that citizens of all ages receive the best healthcare they can. I also personally want to solve the high infant and maternal mortality problem. How many doctors and nurses are employed? We have 31,594 doctors and 73,680 nurses working for the Ministry of Health. This is a high number. What I think is, I don't want to be rude, but out of those numbers, how many are in urban and in rural areas? I mean, that was quite rude there, Ciara, but good point, Pascal. The data shows that per 10,000 people in urban areas there are about 11 doctors, while in rural areas there are only 3. Treatment time is still too high due to the low number of doctors in rural areas, which barely get any proper coverage. How many hospital beds are there per 10,000 citizens? There are 10 beds per 10,000 citizens, which is a very good number according to our comparisons with our neighbours. We see a lower number of the countries for Agnolia and Valen, but obviously can't match Suspia of Oxen. Agnolia and Valen are hard the countries take as a standard, but it's good to know that we aren't in a huge health crisis yet. Alright, well, what's the life expectancy and mortality rates? Our life expectancy is 65 years, and the infant mortality rate is a worrying 85 per 1,000 births, while maternal rate mortality is 90 per 1,000. Yeah, that's pretty bad there, bro. Be assured that we are doing everything we can to save mothers and the newborn. Those numbers are stunning indeed. Yeah, no kidding. We have to do everything we can. We are working very hard on improving the quality of the services. Thank you, Pascal. Your in-depth briefing is much appreciated. Alright, I want to hear about the education system. With pleasure. Soldier education is free, but we have a very outdated system that I want to reform. The other important issue is the lack of access to education in rural areas, especially for young girls. Your administration has power to solve both problems. The highest priority is to get enough funding to be able to build schools in rural areas while I cleanse our educational system of nationalist indoctrination and sexist teachings. How many students and teachers do we have? Currently, there are about 5 million students, 3 million primary, 1 million secondary, and 1 million in tertiary. There are 155,316 teachers. Solden is full of bright, young and bright minds. We should keep striving to make education available for all. I think there needs to be a change in the way of thought. We should help children to question and educate themselves. For sure. What's the literacy rate? The literacy rate of Solden is 80%. This is a very good indicator for future growth, but needs to increase. It's also far lower among girls and boys. If I remember correctly, the most illiterate areas are Berger and Ireland. That is correct, although Lockhaven skews the statistics for the Narcus region, which also has a vast number of illiterate citizens. This underlines my point about the lack of access to education. Well then, tell me about the differences between urban and rural education. Urban areas have 3 times the number of schools per 10,000 people compared to rural areas. Rural areas also suffer from a lack of teachers. I mean, I can imagine teachers not preferring desolate areas for work. Salaries for teachers are very low here. We need to increase the pay to give them more incentive. Thank you, Ciara. I think I can fill in the blanks from here. So, I believe that's everything. Ciara stood up and moved towards the window. She took a deep breath. What's up, Ciara? Look at this impoverished city. The streets full of potholes, the hospital barely functioning, the school half open. This is not just about Seoul or even Alfonso failing. This decay in Seoul's forgotten regions has been going on for many decades due to structural corruption, which is fueled by capitalism. Well, we're here to change that trend and to provide for the people. And that remains to be seen. I'm working on the new education system, and your support would be welcome. Ciara sat back down and sighed. One way or another, we need to transform. Greed and unchecked capitalism will not magically provide for the people. Well, tell me more about your plans, Ciara. My plans require an increase in the government budget. I aim to solve the problems we highlighted with the allocated money. By building schools in these less fortunate rural areas and through fundamental changes to the education system, I will unlock the potential of all our children, boys and girls alike. Interesting. I thought we had a quality of service problem. Isn't Swedish education lacking in quality? Our statistics show the disparity between urban and rural education. We can either do something about it or wait until things get worse. Wouldn't a promotion of some private education help create additional funds? Yes, but at what cost? I'm not a supporter of the private sector in education. Because at the end of the day, they're focused on profit first. Cool, thanks. What are you working towards, Pascal? I personally want to improve the low quality of healthcare in the rural areas. So I created draft plans to increase the salary of doctors and upgrade the equipment of the hospitals. I can do more with an increased budget. Additionally, a privatization plan to promote private investments in the healthcare system could allocate extra funds. Well, I personally promised that our health systems would be improved in our term. I fully support you, Pascal. This is one of the reasons I'm optimistic about the upcoming budget debates. With enough funds, we can build hospitals where necessary and expand the quality of our services. I do hope to create competition and increase the quality of healthcare with the privatization effort. A private healthcare system would increase the price of treatment and make access worse for the average citizen. Besides, I believe we have decided to promote a more planned economy. My expectation from our government is that we understand and focus on the needs of the people. Minister Walder, I bailed out people in need instead of businesses. Trust me, my priorities are correct. It has shown your dedication, but there are many years ahead of us. This is just the beginning of the journey. No matter how small a step, it is still progress. I think we covered all the necessary subjects. Thank you for your time. I do hope we won't repeat the same mistakes again and again. Have a good day, Mr. President. Ministers left, and I attended other official business in the city. The weather was relatively cold, but it didn't keep a group of USP supporters from coming out to cheer at us on the streets. Just by looking at the citizens' attire, it was easy to understand the current state of Narbel. Some people wearing clothes a few sizes too large. Some kids didn't even have shoes. Yet there was hope in their eyes. They were excited to see their president in their city. Fantastic. Alright, and that feels like as good a spot as any to go and call for today. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you all next time.